You're watching Hot Walk Academy. My name is Ming-Jinn Tong. I want to show you today how to make a basic stir-fry noodle. We're going to be using scallop noodles and doing a chicken and celery stir-fry to go with it. We want to help you master your kitchen. Let's cook. A quick rundown of our tools and ingredients we're using today. Over here is soy sauce. We're gonna be using soy sauce and rice wine to marinate our chicken before we stir fry it. This is the oil we'll be using. It's canola oil, which is a great high heat, neutral flavored oil. We've got coarse kosher salt that we'll be using. And of course, we've got our fish sauce, which will go actually into the pan when we are making our noodles along with the soy sauce. For our noodles, I've got this fantastic product. These are scallop noodles, which means there is actual dried scallops that have been pulverized, mixed in with the wheat flour, and they make noodles with both of those combined. If you've not tried these scallop or shrimp noodles before, definitely pick these up at your Asian market. You will just thoroughly enjoy them. For our chicken, we are using chicken breast. Now, normally chicken breast is such a dry meat. I'll show you how to make it nice and juicy and tender for your stir fry. We're gonna be using garlic and red onion. And for the vegetable, we're gonna be using celery, and we're gonna have some scallion in there as well. So let's go ahead and prepare that, and we'll just leave them right here on the board. For our ginger root, we just need, for our garlic, we just need about 3 cloves is really all we need. So we'll peel that apart, and let's go ahead and give it a pie in Chinese. That helps to break the garlic apart, and when you do that, the skin comes off so easy. And this garlic is gonna be a part of the dish. So what we wanna do is we wanna go ahead and cut it small enough so that when we're eating it, we're not biting into a big chunk of garlic. It's gonna flavor the oil and it's gonna flavor the dish. And that size right there is good enough for our purposes. For the red onion, we want the red onion to have roughly the same shape as the chicken and the celery. And I really love using a red onion for this dish because everything else is almost the same color. The red onion gives a nice pop of color. So what we'll be doing is we're gonna cut off the stem and we're gonna cut off the root, and we're gonna cut the rest of the red onion along the bias so we have these nice crescents to work with. So once the root and the stem are gone, let's cut that right in half, and we're gonna go ahead and peel off this last layer of onion, the skin. Sometimes it can be a little tricky. You can just use the point of your knife and get it out of there, all right? Same thing for this one. Okay, for the red onion, we're gonna find the way that the fibers are growing, and we're gonna cut along those fibers. That helps make sure that the onion has some integrity, especially when it gets under that high heat. Don't cut it too thin because we want to have some texture with it. When it gets too small to hold on to, tip that over and finish your cuts. Let's do that one more time. Find the bias. We're not gonna go this way and cut across. We're gonna cut the same way as the grain. And again, too small to hold. I'm gonna tip it over. And that is beautiful, ready to go. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and set that right here in my landing bowl. And the onion is gonna go in a little bit earlier than the celery. For the celery, what we're gonna do is we're gonna just use about, we'll probably use all of these things. So here we go, about that many. This has already been pre-washed. What we're gonna do here is we wanna cut off that end. And from here, the design that I wanna do, that I wanna have for my celery, I'm gonna do 2 at a time. I'm actually gonna be cutting diagonally. So I'm gonna hold it just like this, and my blade is gonna come in at a diagonal angle because I want the celery to have that same crescent shape that I find here in my red onion. So to make it match, we're gonna cut the celery in this direction. About the same thickness, but diagonal, so that we have a piece that looks like this that can match the shape of the red onion. It's a great value in Chinese food. Not only does the shape matter, that it's uniform, but the fact that they're cut about the same thickness and the same shape means that they're gonna cook at about the same speed. So we really want that so that our food comes out cooked evenly. And let's go ahead and finish our cuts here. Let's see if I can do 3 at a time. Hopefully it's not too ambitious here. Oh, that one came out a little thick. Okay. All right, here we go. We've got our celery ready on one side of the prep bowl, red onion on the other side, and I'll find just a little space to put that garlic. All right, for your chicken breast, what we're gonna do is lay that down, and chicken breast is a little bit funny. The grain grows, let me see if I can show that to you. The grain of the breast meat, it actually grows from here over toward the center breastplate and then down. So when you think about cutting chicken breast, you kind of have to think through what way the grain is going. Because when we cut it, we want to cut that grain. Remember, anything your knife cuts is one thing less that your teeth do not have to cut, right? So to begin with, I'm going to trim off this fat actually. And here, because the grain is growing this way, this is the direction I'm gonna cut. So the grain is going here, which means my blade is gonna come across and cut that. So I want pieces that are roughly the same size as my celery and my onion. I'm gonna identify a piece here. I'm gonna make a cut this direction, which leaves the grain going this way. In fact, you can see very clearly how the grain of the chicken breast is going this way. I'm gonna lay it here to remind myself. Again, the grain is growing here. I wanna make one more slice this direction. And now I'm actually ready to cut the chicken breast because all the grain is running this way, which means when I come through, I'm gonna go through with my knife and make a thin cut this direction to cut that grain. Keep your fingernails down and just make sure your knife is nice and sharp and go right on through. We'll do that again for the other pieces. Again, the grain's running this way, which means I want my knife to cut the other direction, perpendicular to that grain. I'm making nice thick cuts, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And in fact, I'll tell you why now. When you are stir frying your chicken, if the chicken breast is cut too thinly, it actually falls apart. Now, a thick chicken breast, especially in a high heat wok, it does take a little bit of time to cook. However, we are gonna do a velveting technique, which means we're gonna add some baking soda to our marinade, and that's gonna help the chicken breast to be nice and juicy. Let me finish these cuts and then we'll get to marinating our chicken breast. Once all your chicken breast is cut, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna add some rice wine. And the rice wine, we say in Chinese, it 去腥, which means it kind of gets rid of that raw flavor. So we'll add some of that, just a touch. And from here, we're gonna add our soy sauce. Now, soy sauce is gonna provide some coloration and a lot of flavor. It is the salt that we're using for our chicken. So let's go ahead and add that on there. And my mom always says, hey, don't put too much. Don't let your chicken come out dark. It's a naturally white colored meat. When we cook it, we want it to appear that way as well. And so to help it just a little bit, I am gonna add a little bit of salt because I did not put that much soy sauce in there. And lastly, in order to create what we call velveting in Chinese cooking, we're gonna add baking soda. Why do we add baking soda? Baking soda is a base, the opposite of an acid. When we put baking soda into meat, what it does is it raises the pH level from about 7, where it's at right now, to about a number 8. And that is gonna help the protein to not hold on so tightly to itself when it's under heat. In fact, at a high pH level, the proteins cannot hold on, they are much looser. And what that means is that the chicken meat will be much more tender. However, if you add too much baking soda, what's gonna happen? It's gonna have a real funky, almost chemical taste. No one wants that in their food. Just do a light sprinkle. That is really all you need of baking soda. And we're gonna marinate that, and we'll let that sit for just a few minutes. You know, some people say you need to let that baking soda sit on your chicken for a few hours. I've tested that and I've not found that to be accurate. You can actually put that in, and in just a few minutes time, that baking soda is gonna do its job along with the marinade, and your chicken will be ready to go. All right, let's go ahead and cook all these things up. We've got our noodles boiling, and again, we're using this scallop noodle, and this is how they come out of the package. They look like these little nests. And for the amount of vegetables that I have, I've got 3 of these nests that are ready to go. And I'm just gonna pull them out here. And what I wanna do is we wanna make sure that they have been cooked until they are QQ with that right toothsome flavor, or that right toothsome texture. So here we go. And you know, even when you are stir frying noodles, you actually wanna undercook your noodle. You don't want your noodle to be overcooked in the liquid, because remember, you are still cooking it a second time. And all of that heat and the moisture is gonna continue cooking your noodle. So you can feel free to pull that out a little bit early, and we're just gonna let that sit. And with this nice net basket, I'm just gonna give it a toss. Couple goals here. Number 1, I wanna let that steam out. That steam is continuing to cook your noodle. You don't want that to happen. Give it a toss, let it steam out, put a plate underneath, and catch the drips. So from here, these noodles are ready to go. I might actually just squirt a little bit of oil on them to make sure that they don't stick together. And we're gonna give it just another toss one more time, just to incorporate that oil and make sure it stays loose for us. Okay, we'll leave that on the side. For our stir fry, we're gonna do a high heat with oil. And the first step we're gonna do is we are going to stir fry our chicken. When your pan is nice and hot, let's go ahead and add some oil. This is canola oil, again, a high heat oil. We'll do about that much oil, should be good for us to cook our chicken. This chicken has been marinating and it is ready to go. So what I wanna do now, I wanna bring my pan temp up very high. Here's the idea. As soon as you put your chicken in, it is going to reduce the temperature of the pan. All of the temperature is going to peak right now. It's never gonna get as hot as it is when you begin. So I wanna let that heat build up as much as I can. It's totally fine. If it's smoking, just get your vet hood on and make sure you pull all that smoke out. And from here, let's go ahead and add our chicken. It's gonna stick right when we put it on, so we just leave it alone. Boy, that smells wonderful. So my first move is I'm gonna swirl that oil around. All right, and let's go ahead and get the rest of that chicken down, touching the wok, cooking by conductive heat. Once it's started to cook a little bit, it will loosen up. And as it loosens, I'm able now to scrape it off the bottom. And look at that, it just comes right off without any problems. And right now, what I'm doing is I am stir frying my chicken, and I'm actually gonna pull it back out. This is a 2-part cook way for proteins. Anytime you have a stir fry that involves both a protein and a vegetable, you always do it in this order. You cook your meat first, and you don't have to cook it all the way through. because you are gonna introduce it back into the pan for incorporation later. But for now, I know that my chicken was cut pretty thick, so I'm gonna let that cook. I'm gonna get it to about 85 to 90% of the way there before I pull it out. So this is gonna take a little bit of time. My fire is still on the highest heat, and we're gonna let that cook. I like to fan it out to get as much contact between the product and the wok as possible. Let's just talk about the oil for a little bit. You can see the bottom of the pan here has virtually no oil, which means all of that oil, although it seemed maybe like a lot when we put it in, it's actually being absorbed by that chicken, and it's helping to cook that chicken all the way through. And if you want, you can cut one piece of chicken in half. I'll pick a real thick piece and I'll go ahead and slice it. And I can see now on the inside, it's doing really well. It is white all the way through, which means it's done. I'll turn my flame all the way off, and I'm gonna put my cooked product back into the raw bowl, the bowl where it came. But you know what? That's totally fine. We are not gonna eat it yet. We are gonna put it back into our wok before we eat it, so it's fine to go in the raw bowl. Let's get our flame back up to about a medium heat. And now, the amount of oil we're gonna add this time is all the oil we need for our noodles as well. Noodles can be like a sponge, so we wanna add a little bit more than we normally would. So I might do about 3 circles of oil there. And without letting the heat get too high, I'm gonna put all my garlic in. I'm gonna let that garlic go ahead and 爆香. Again, this particular step is to help the oil take on that garlic flavor. Because the garlic was cut pretty small, I don't have to do this for a long time. I'm just gonna let that garlic sizzle in that oil, cooking the garlic, flavoring the oil. You can see in the pan, there might be some bits, and those bits are from actually the chicken protein. They're starting to get really burned and maybe a little crispy in there. That's totally fine. It's gonna become one part of the dish, don't even worry about it. Let's go ahead and take my garlic, and I'm gonna move my garlic out into my product bowl. And I'm gonna turn my oil now all the way up high. I'm gonna build up my heat in my wok. And all that protein stuck to the wok, not a problem. It's gonna just fall into part of the meal. Here we go with the rest. This is green onion, celery, and red onion. When you're doing this at home, you can really add whatever kind of vegetables you want. Again, this is a formula for making any kind of a stir-fry noodle dish. You don't need to use these ingredients. I like scallions, I like red onions, I like celery, and so that's why I'm adding it in. You can put whatever you like. There really is no wrong way to do it. Add whatever vegetable, whatever aromatic you enjoy. Okay, at this stage, I do need to add some salt. Now, you might wonder what's happened to the chicken protein that was stuck on the wok before. By moving my spatula around the wok, I can actually feel it's gone. Where did it go? What's happening is that the liquid from these vegetables is becoming steam, and that steam is essentially steaming the protein off of the inside of the wok. So all of that chicken that was stuck on is now going to be stuck to the vegetables and off the wok. It's not gonna burn. It'll actually add a lot of flavor to what you're making. So this looks pretty good to me. Let's give it a toss. And you know, I don't want my veggies to be super soft. I like my veggies to be nice and crisp. So don't overcook them. At this point, I'm making another observation. There's almost no oil in the bottom of my pan. That's not good for my noodles. So I do want to add a little bit more oil to help my noodles be able to move around. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and incorporate my noodles in there. All right. Now, wet noodles like to stick to a hot pan. That's why you need oil, and that's why you need to let your noodles steam out. Let's go ahead and incorporate it. All right, and my noodles are not sticking. And again, that's because I had sufficient oil in there and because the noodles were not wet to begin with. When your noodles are wet, they really, really like to stick. Okay, time to add a little bit of flavoring. What I'm gonna add here is the classics that I like to do. I like to do fish sauce and I like to do soy sauce. I'm gonna go around the edge of the pan to let that fish sauce cook as it goes in. Same with my soy sauce, right around the edge where it's hot. And again, I'll give that a toss. At this point, I'm not really cooking anymore. I'm actually just incorporating and mixing all the sauces and vegetables together. And I've determined that is pretty much done. So what I need to do now is I need to add my chicken back in and give it one last mix. And let's see if I can give that a toss. Just kind of get that incorporated. Might be a little heavy to toss. There we go. All right, we are pretty much done with our basic stir fry. Again, you can use this method to make any kind of a stir fry noodle. Any vegetable, any aromatic, any protein, any kind of a noodle you like. If you follow this structure, this format, you'll be able to make a stir-fried noodle any kind that you like. I hope you give it a try at home. Continue practicing. You might have noodles that stick. You might not put enough salt. Keep doing it. You'll get better and better. Thanks for watching.